Matt, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Really, really happy to have you. Excited to have you. I've dove into the world of psychedelics a little bit on this podcast, especially more recently as I'm trying to just get more knowledge in this area. I think there's a lot of murky waters here. Talking to people like you has definitely helped clarify a few things. So I'm really excited for this conversation. First and foremost, Matt, how are you doing today?
Ryan, I'm doing well. I appreciate this. I appreciate you doing this in the spirit of the pursuit of happiness, and I appreciate you doing this. But 3 weeks after the birth of your son. So, am I
Yes.
your first podcast since you
You
have?
are. You are.
Amazing.
I'm going to do one with my wife. We're going to talk about the process. We're actually going to talk about the C-section and all that stuff, make people aware of actually like how to prepare for that and the aftermath of a C-section, all that kind of stuff. But we've been kind of
Hmm.
stumbling and bumbling around the house trying to catch up on sleep when we can. But the energy is gradually coming back to have good conversations, be prepared. But yeah, I'm really excited to get back on the mic here. And yeah, couldn't think of a better topic here as far as the pursuit of happiness goes. One of the reasons I want to keep covering psychedelics is because a lot of people are using this to find happiness and to battle depression and mental health, just help clear their mental health. And I brought up on a podcast a few months back with Rob, who introduced me to you.
Hmm.
One of my best friends was borderline suicidal, very, very depressed, and he's been doing ketamine treatment for a while now. And he just kind of said how it just completely changed his outlook on life. And that's when it kind of changed my outlook on psychedelics. I was like, okay, I need to start learning more about this because I think you're going to talk about how growing up we were kind of taught to just say no. And yeah, that has some merit to it, right? That definitely has some merit to it, the whole DARE program and whatnot. But there are certain tools that we can use, especially in this realm of psychedelics, that could really help us. I think we're really starting to understand how these can help us, who it's for. And that's what my conversation with you is going to be about, as you're more of a master in this area, if you will. First, I want to promote you're an author of two books. The Psychedelics Are for Everyone and Beyond the Trip, a journal for psychedelic preparation and integration. You're also the executive director of the Sacred Path community. And I also want to reiterate your mission is to broaden understanding and access for these transformative substances. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So, did I miss something as I introduced you?
You didn't, but I want to pause this whole conversation. Just have your whoever's listening to focus in on what you just said. On we grew up in a just say no um, society.
Mhm.
Drugs are bad. They're going to fry your brain. You're going to get addicted. There's no medical use.
I remember the egg commercial. I remember the egg commercial. This is your
The
brain on
egg on the
drugs with
frying
like an
pan.
egg in the frying pan. Yep.
And it worked for me. I believed them. So anyone born since 1970, that's been our only that's been what's been primarily fed to us. It's been fed to us from our academics. It's been fed to us from our media. It's been fed to us from our teachers. It's been fed to us from our government, everywhere. So we were living in a prohibition and just nobody told us that. We knew about the alcohol prohibition, but nobody said, oh, and by the way, we're living through a drug prohibition. Or at least I didn't hear that message. I'm sure others did, but I did not. I believed them. I was a good kid. I was a good adult. I didn't do these things because I believed what I was told. Now, fast forward to 2024, 300 academic institutions studying psychedelics,
Mm.
paper after paper after paper about, wow, this breaks repetitive thinking patterns. Wow, these can lead to massive behavioral change, massive perception change. This can lead to changing how we work with different substances. It's a very interesting time to be alive. But your perspective of, I don't really know much about this. And um, other than I have some people that I know in my life that have seemed to be helped by this,
Hmm.
I think that's normal and it's okay. And it's not because we are uneducated, it's because the education we were given was based on lies. And now we have a chance to just kind of look at the landscape and decide maybe these are good for me, maybe these are psychedelics are for somebody I love, or maybe I just want to have the knowledge so I can be more informed for the next election. And all of that is okay. No one's here to tell you that you need to take a psychedelic or you should take a psychedelic. It's at least have the information to make an informed decision for yourself.
Very much reminds me, I've brought up numerous times in this podcast about how we grew up with the food pyramid, right? We were all
Mm-hmm.
taught like something that's just completely been debunked and just completely eating the wrong garbage and stuff growing up. It's so hard for people to unlearn things. It's hard to teach people new things. It's much harder to have people unlearn things. I know sometimes when I have conversations with my parents or my in-laws or just older folk in general, I guess you can say, to have them change their ways is completely, it's just it's very difficult. It's a very difficult task. So I think conversations like these are super beneficial. Just kind of open the eyes and open the minds of people. And I think when people talk about psychedelics, talk about drugs, maybe it's just me. We a lot of us think about like recreational use,
Right.
right? When not we're not really using or thinking of these as like medicine. And these are actually really like medicine. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean that is certainly what 305 academic institutions are saying is that these drugs, these medicines can be used as an alternative to some of the existing treatments options that exist today. So we know with antidepressants that they only work maybe on 40-ish% of our population. And we really haven't had another medical option since the antidepressant, which is going on 50 some years.
Mm,
We know that talk therapy has its limitations. And we know that loneliness, depression, anxiety, substance use challenges, these things are real, and that people want an alternative for their healing. And potentially psychedelics can work in many of these spaces for many people. But I want to just keep coming back to two things when it comes to psychedelics. I'm going to talk about the medical model, which, okay, you have an affliction, you have a diagnosis, and you want to have a cure or a treatment plan for that diagnosis. And I want to come to the ceremonial model. I don't want a diagnosis. I want to explore my mortality. I want to explore my consciousness. I want to optimize my time on this earth. I want to connect with my sacred. So for the reasons that people have used psychedelics for thousands of years is
mhm.
often on the sacred side and not just on the medical side. So I want to keep just bringing both those up as we go down this path. But yeah, lots and lots of medical use, and we can dive into any of it in this conversation, but also lots of sacred use, and we can dive into any of that as we progress here.
Yeah, let's do that. I also want to say that a few years ago, about probably about 3 years ago now, I've been doing this podcast for 4 years. I had someone on, we talked about ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
And ayahuasca is kind of, I guess, getting more limelight, if you will, over these last few years. I want to say partially due to Aaron Rodgers. If you're familiar with Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback of the Jets now, was the Packers. He talks about these ayahuasca retreats. Now everyone's kind of just like throwing these ayahuasca, like he's crazy and all that kind of stuff. Actually, probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago now, my sister, who's very spiritual, I will say, definitely more spiritual than I am, actually took a trip down to Costa Rica to
Mm.
do one of these kind of retreats. And they had ayahuasca ceremonies, they had the shamans there, all that kind of stuff. So I became somewhat familiar with ayahuasca. I never heard of this. I was like, what is this? And found it super interesting. And then I started to kind of see more like documentaries on ayahuasca, how people use it, why people use it, how it kind of connects with a lot of people from their past and ancestors and all that kind of stuff, how it can like, I don't know, open up the gates to things in their history and things they're dealing with. So that's, I kind of want to touch real quick on the ceremonial aspect of that. Let's touch on that a little bit, but I also want to kind of get to where your history began with psychedelics. So we can talk about how you got involved with them.
Sure, happy to do all of that. So let's stick with ayahuasca for a moment. So ayahuasca, for those who are listening who don't know, this is a tea that is made from two different vines. It has been used in indigenous ceremony for I don't know, thousands of years, 1,000 years, a long time. And it is something that you drink, and the active ingredient is DMT. So when you take this medicine, you end up having a variety of things happen to your body. You end up having visuals, you end up having deep connection with the earth. And sometimes with ayahuasca, it's a very physical medicine. So you may purge as part of the process. That's why it's a little bit harder of a medicine than some of the psychedelics that are out there. And it has been shown to be incredibly powerful. We know groups like Heroic Hearts Project take veterans down to Central and South America so that they can participate in these ayahuasca ceremonies to work on their post-traumatic stress disorder, even more specifically, their treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder, and have tremendous results, upwards of 80% having significant reductions in their PTSD. We know other people choose to go on these ayahuasca ceremonies just again because they want to optimize, they want to connect with their sacred. So it's used in for both purposes. And I think it's interesting. Back in the quote old days, there was just healers, and the healers were both medical and spiritual. Well, in the indigenous communities, that's still the case today. So sometimes in these communities, people are going to the healers, they're participating in ayahuasca ceremony, and sometimes because they want to heal something, and others is they want to grow in a different way. But ayahuasca is getting more and more press. It's getting more and more research, and there are in the United States there are two ayahuasca churches that actually have exemptions from our government, which make
Mm,
them legal to practice here in the United States. Now, to be clear, these are two very specific churches that have this. It comes out of a Catholic Brazilian sect that sued and sued and sued and was allowed here to practice here in the United States. So there are ways to do legal ayahuasca here in America, and then there are a number of ayahuasca churches that don't have the exemption but believe that they are practicing legally under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So they are taking a defense position of we are practicing our right to practice our religion, and we don't need an exemption from the government. So if you're looking for a exemption based church, you can find that. And if you're looking for a church that is not exemption based, you can find that here in the States. And certainly you can take psychedelic tourism down to Central America, South America, even Mexico has some ayahuasca retreats, and participate in that medicine.
that's awesome. So you might not need a passport to do ayahuasca if you really wanted to. That's good to know. I had no idea that you can do it a couple places here in America. Um, I think we can talk about ayahuasca for hours, and maybe I'll have you back. We can actually do that. I'm super interested in that. But for our listeners, and even myself, I want to talk more about how you got into psychedelics. Does this have anything to do with the story of your parents growing up? Because I was doing some research on that.
Mm.
I'm aware that they both passed at a young age, especially when you were at a young age, and I can completely understand how that would be extremely traumatic. So if you don't mind, I would love for you to touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for doing some research. And I was a junior in college when my father died, and I was 22 when my mom died. She was 49. Yeah, and that it was very hard. Um, but I think I did what many people do, which is go from being very sad to kind of putting it in a drawer and moving on with life and getting married and having kids and building businesses and just moving on, all while missing my mom. I also gave up on any faith I had when my mom passed. I was like, that's it. This is a there's I can't even conceive of a God that would allow this to happen. Well, fast forward to um, early 2019. Um, I was invited to a guided magic mushroom journey. And at that point, I was a non drug user. This was something so far outside of my comfort zone. I actually said no the first time. But my friends said, look, you love to learn, and this is a way to learn about yourself. You love to travel. This is a way to take the most glorious trip you've ever taken. And you might find this good for you. So I did it. Um, and it was absolutely phenomenal, completely changed the way I look and interact with this world. And that first experience, I reconnected with my mom. I could feel her next to me, and I could pull like a string of some sort from her to me to my children, and in an instant realized, oh my goodness, she's not gone. I am carrying her forward, and my children are carrying us forward, and we're all connected. And I got it. And in that first experience, I felt so safe and loved. I've never felt that way before. And then in an instant realized, oh my goodness, I don't feel this safe and loved in my everyday life.
Hmm.
Why? What's going on with that? I know now I'm capable of this other set of feelings. Why? How do I get there outside of this medicine? And I had kind of inspiration and insight after insight after insight through this journey, left it and said, I need to know more. And I went back to school to get a master's in psychology and neuroscience, focused on the science behind psychedelics. But then I also started traveling around the country and in the world experiencing psychedelics from a range of practitioners, MDs and PhDs and taitas and shaman. And where I've settled now is I think it's all an and. There's a medical role and there's a sacred role. And I'm personally more interested in the sacred role, but it's all important and beautiful and necessary and good for all of us.
Mm, that's incredible. So for people that are considering taking a psychedelic, doing shrooms or something of that nature, what was that nudge that got you to say yes? Was it hoping to see your mom and or your dad or anything? You're shaking your head.
Actually,
No.
no.
What was the nudge?
I went in with such low expectations, Ryan, which is actually probably a good thing in retrospect. I expected, what did I expect? I expected visuals. I expected to hear me. I love music and I expected to hear the music in a way that would be beautiful. Um, I honestly, yeah, I didn't think it was going to work on me. I was like, this is all kind of group think and hip. I don't know. I just did. I went in with really low expectations. And when again, this is mushrooms is what we're talking about here. When you take a mushroom or take mushrooms, you go in through these different scenes, is what I call them, and they're kind of they come over waves. It's like whoosh, and you're into this deep scene, and then you kind of come up for air, and then you go into another scene and another scene. And I didn't realize how many scenes that I could see in a single journey. I didn't realize how much it could unveil and reveal in a single journey. Um, but yeah, my expectations were low. It wasn't my intention to connect with my mom. My intention was simply like, show me what I need to see.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. Um, yeah, I am so grateful.
What does
Like,
it look like when you take shrooms? Like, where are you? What kind of setting? Who's around you? Are your eyes closed and you're visualizing this? Is
mm,
it like what's happening for people that are kind of unfamiliar what happens after you take this?
so there's a range of way this can occur. So let's first talk about how do you access shrooms in America. So the entire state of Oregon, the entire state of Colorado has legalized a medical framework where psilocybin is part of that, can be part of that solution. Oregon is already up and running. Colorado's close behind, but there is a way to access shrooms legally in a medical model here in America. Another way you can access it is through these clinical trials that are happening. Johns Hopkins has done some really famous ones. University of California, San Francisco, a number of Yale, number of academic institutions studying psychedelics, and maybe you can get yourself into a trial for a range of things. That's another way to access it. And then there's these underground churches. There isn't a church that has an exemption from the government for psilocybin, but there are many churches that use psilocybin as a sacrament. Um, so so then to answer your question, what does it look like? Well, it depends on who you're with. So what I love about Johns Hopkins is they've gone out of their way to really make it a comfortable, not just a biochemical experience, but a biochemical, psychosocial, spiritual experience where there's a mattress and there's an eye mask where your eyes are cut, the hole is cut out so your eyes can be open, but you're surrounded in blackness. And you have a blanket and you have music. And you take the psilocybin almost through a ritual of some sort. I think that's a really beautiful way to consume this medicine. In the ceremonial space in which I do most of my things, it's similar. We have mattresses, blankets, eye masks. We bring in live musicians, 3 to 7 live musicians who are creating a custom soundscape based on the energy in the room. We have facilitators who have served thousands and thousands of people with psilocybin, and they know kind of how to, if somebody is scared or in a loop, how do they move them out of there as unobtrusively as possible, so that they can keep doing that having that experience that they are there to have. Um, Sometimes, again, the ceremonial space, there might be an altar of some sort. Um, there may be smells, things that are burning, or feathers that are waved, or different instruments that are used again to help create different energies and feels in the room. The medical model, there are practitioners who go kind of that direction. There are practitioners who do more of a clinical, colder feel. Interestingly, they're even the colder feel has results, but I think the research is showing that the more a person has what's called a mystical experience, the more sticky the results.
Mm.
And yeah, I think it's beautiful. But we're seeing. I'll just give one example of a medical. And why the FDA has given breakthrough therapy designation to psilocybin is they're using it with end of life patients. So people have been given a terminal diagnosis, and they're using the psilocybin not to change the fact that they're going to die, but to change the quality of their life during this period. So if you can imagine our existing medical options, if we were to try to give them an antidepressant, it's going to take months to figure out if this one works. And if it doesn't, they've got to downgrade that and go through that whole weaning process and start again. They don't have time. They're, as you can imagine, experiencing great depression, experiencing great anxiety, wrestling with their mortality. Psilocybin in a single dose can reduce those things dramatically. And they can then experience this remaining period in a different way. We take it a step further in the ceremonial space and say, great, you're giving it to the person who's actively dying. That is beautiful and that is important. Thank you. And let's offer it to their friends and family who are witnessing this death so that they also can reduce their depression, anxiety, so they also can connect and understand that, in my belief, that we are spiritual people having a human experience, and that this is a transition, not a goodbye forever. And and again, and what we see is again reduction, depression, anxiety. What we see is tremendous um, healing in the terms of forgiveness and conversations that needed to happen and love that needed to be shared. I think it's really beautiful for all parties involved to be able to use this type of particular tool, again, to connect with the sacred, learn, heal, and grow together.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are antidepressants mostly, don't they mostly kind of like numb the brain a little bit? Like, so you're shaking your head a little bit. Like,
Yeah, they work in different parts. And I think that's the at a very simplistic level, that's an easy way to see it. They're going to numb the symptoms, but they're not going. And the idea behind them is that these were stabilizers. These were meant to be for episodes. They weren't meant to be decades long solutions that people take over and over and over. But our healthcare system is not equipped to help to go through the expense and the process of getting people off of the antidepressant
mhm.
and to helping have them figure out that core root item. So the difference, in my opinion, on psychedelics versus an antidepressant is rather than numb the symptoms, you're going to take control of your health. You're going to do a deep look inside yourself, and you're going to come out knowing that you are loving, that you are loved, you are powerful, you are worthy, and that you've experienced these things in your life, these traumas, these different things. And with that knowledge, you can start to shape different behaviors moving forward. So I tell people all the time the psychedelic themselves, in my opinion, are not a cure for anything. They are a catalyst. They are a catalyst for awareness. And with that awareness, then starts the work of, okay, now that I've seen what I've seen, how do I implement that into my life? And how do I carry that forward? And how do I connect with my sacred every day, not on psychedelics? And how do I connect and remember my power every day when I'm not on the psychedelic? And there's lots of tools and techniques that we call integration that good practitioners, I probably shouldn't be, but that some practitioners make sure that's a part of your journey with the psychedelic, that you are getting support unpacking whatever it is you saw and implementing the change that you want to implement and helping that stick as you move forward.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because when I think when somebody is prescribed like antidepressants, they're just on a pill for X amount of time. Like that sounds very unattractive to me. It's like, here you
Mm.
go. Here's a pill. Here's a pill. We're just going to numb your mind. We're going to numb how you think. And I feel like psychedelics are the complete opposite. They open up your mind. And I was just thinking how like you just mentioned people at their end of life have been given psychedelics and they probably feel more alive at the end of their life than they have their whole entire life because of everything that they're seeing and everything they're being shown and the connections that are being made. That just sounds like absolutely incredible. That's what a great experience. and then for the people around them to experience with them, and then all to just have this connection before I guess you can say that that date happens where they pass away. Like that sounds well, I was not expecting that. That actually really sounds like a magical
Mm.
moment. Have you witnessed this
Oh, so
personally?
many times, Ryan,
Really?
so many times. And so I want to back up because you and I have had conversation before this. I know that we both know people who've benefited greatly from antidepressants. We both know people who are on a regime where they're using ketamine as an example, not an
Mhm.
antidepressant, but this other medicine periodically, and it's changed their lives. Um, so for people where the medicine has worked and they're able to stabilize, they're able to take control of other aspects of their life, this is beautiful. And there's no shame. If that's working for you, that is amazing. Good. What I'm encouraging people who, where the medicine is not working, to switch the mentality. It's not you failing the medicine, it's the medicine failing you, and to open the mind to the possibility that there's these other things out there, and to open your mind potentially, or that this doesn't have to be medical. I don't need to have a diagnosis that I have this much depression to be allowed to explore my consciousness, to be allowed to think about my mortality, to want to use these tools for all the different reasons that I may want to use them.
Hmm.
And I think that is, I think that's a little bit of a mind shift. And again, we're staying completely away. We're not even touching recreational. So we're only for this conversation. I think this is probably enough for this conversation to focus in on those who want medical and those who want sacred, and some want both. And that's okay.
Hmm.
Um, but I do, to your point, I've seen incredible people at the end of life have experiences with these medicines. I've seen incredible impact across families using these medicines. I've seen incredible people who've had life debilitating post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, substance use challenges, emerge with a different awareness, and then that shaped behavior. And also, this is not just woo-woo nonsense. Let's talk about for just a moment treatment resistant post traumatic stress disorder. And let's think of everybody, imagine in your head a veteran, a first responder, a victim of sexual assault, where they've tried the medications and they've tried the talk therapies and nothing works. That's the treatment resistant part of post traumatic stress disorder. So now we have an organization, MAPS, who for 30 years fundraised around a drug called MDMA. And they ended up making it through phase one, phase two, and now phase three clinical trials where they've given this medicine to these people with treatment resistant post traumatic stress disorder. So, this is not a researcher's dream. This is a hard group to work with. And they gave them 3 sessions with MDMA and therapy before and therapy after. And upwards of 70% left that experience no longer having a PTSD diagnosis. The result is phenomenal.
Wow.
So again, MDMA got FDA breakthrough therapy diagnosis or designation. MAPS now Lycos has filed for this to become a drug, and we are a legal drug in America. And we're hoping by August of this year, potentially, that MDMA may be re-legalized in America and give hope to these veterans and first responders and victims of sexual assault where nothing has worked. Give them a new lease on life. We've had more veterans take their lives since 9/11 than all of the people who've died in combat since 9/11. So these, I mean, I think it's 30,000 is the number we're up to. It's a huge number. So something's got to change. And for us to say that, no, you can't put this in your body, but you can kill yourself, is strikes me as mean.
That's incredible. I think what I've heard from this conversation and my conversation with Rob a few episodes back is it seems like psychedelics is the last straw for a lot of people. Should it ever be the first straw? And you're smiling because I'm thinking like if this is the if this is a key in somebody's recovery, why go through steps one, two, three, four, five that might not work? Should this ever be like someone's go to immediately?
So I mean, I break this into pieces. We have a medical and a pharmaceutical protocol that has people being prescribed antidepressants, which we know, again, doesn't work very often, highly addictive. huge side effects: lethargy, weight gain, suicidal ideation. Some of these SSRIs, there's a study out there with 73% of people who take this in SSRI having sexual dysfunction,
Oof.
huge side effects. All that impacts the quality of life. Yet that is the protocol today. That is what people do. And then if they don't work after this, after X amount of antidepressants, they're allowed then to prescribe ketamine. I don't understand why we wouldn't do the less intrusive, take it every once in a while. Um, Very little side effects. Yeah, money is
Money.
I don't. It's just it again strikes me as backwards. But I also want to be careful with this because I am a fan of it. We needed to go through this process to get to here. We're now here. We're all everybody is open to how do we do better, and we're learning as we go. So I think for people who have a medical diagnosis and want to stay in a legal medical framework, ketamine today is your answer, and you can ask for it and you can demand it. It's prescribed off label. Um, if you want to stay in a legal medical framework, you can travel to Oregon and you can experience psilocybin. Um, you want to stay in a legal medical framework, you can apply for a clinical trial. If you're willing to take control of your health, and you're willing to do things that are not in a medical framework, well, you can fly to Central America, South America, Mexico, the Netherlands, Jamaica, and experience a psychedelic experience there, many of which is done in a therapeutic ceremonial sense. And then there's also 200 to 2,000 psychedelic churches in America, and you can find one of them. The good churches, or sorry, I keep saying good, I should not. It's important as a church that we don't make any medical claims. So church is not therapy, church is ceremony. And you're going there for your own learning, healing, and growing, um and that is whatever you want it to be. They are not therapists for the most part. Um so if you are going for medical reasons, well then you probably need to have someone before and after who can help you in the medical piece. But the ceremony itself is ceremony.
I want to talk about that momentarily and what you do with your Sacred Path community, but not yet, because something I want to connect with and dive in
Sure.
deeper is how you saw your mom.
Mm,
Because I think there's a lot of people who are going to listen to this and they're going to want to take a psychedelic to go see a loved one or to see them again or get that connection or get that feeling. Um, so I guess I kind of want to talk about a couple things. Is one, what did that actually really like? What did that look like? What
mm.
happened? If you can talk about that. And two, should people go in with that expectation of I lost someone in my life, whether it's a family member, close friend, or whoever? I'm going to now take a psychedelic and I'm expecting to connect with them. I would love your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, so I'm going to go backwards. I want to start the second question,
Sure.
which is, should you go into a psychedelic experience with the intention of I want to connect with a someone who's passed? Um, I think it is okay to put that on my list of intentions. I would love to connect with my ancestors. I would love to reconnect with so and so. Um, but I think it's important that the person is careful not to have the expectation that that will happen. It might happen, but it also might not. And and I would recommend being okay with whatever it is that appears. We talk about with the psychedelic space, the medicine is going to show you a bunch of things, and it's going to show you what you need to see today. And sometimes that's what you want to see, and sometimes what you need to see, and sometimes that feels great, and sometimes that feels really hard, and that's all okay. Approach it all with curiosity and take it from for wherever it goes for you. Then to answer your first question, what did it feel like for me?
Mhm.
I'm going to answer that for me and for others. So I'm going to start with me personally. I did not see my mom, but I knew, and that's a strong word.
Mm.
I knew she was there. I knew she was part of me. I knew she and I were part of my children. And I knew it in a way, yeah, that I can't shake that. Um, I have seen people in ceremony who said, wow, I spent the day with my loved one. I spent the day with my husband who passed. I spent the day with my father who died when I was young. And they've seen and they've felt and they've had conversation. I have personally not had that. The closest thing to that that I've had is my father was a challenging human. He was an alcoholic. He 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 was super super smart and successful as a writer, but a challenging person to love, and um, prone to fits of rage. I had an experience, and again, died when I was 19. I had an experience in a psychedelic journey where I had like 100 flashbacks of me holding his hand, and actually more specifically of him holding my hand. And in that, I was able to say, wow, okay, this is a person who lost his father when he was very young, who started drinking when he was very young, who made a series of challenging choices with relationships and how he raised his children. And in his way, he was trying to show me he loved me to the best that he knew how to do. And I could
Mm.
actually feel his hand and remember those scenes over and over and over and over and over, literally like 100 different moments.
Were those real moments or were those made up in your mind, or did they actually happen when you were younger? Do
Oh,
you
I
know?
believe they actually happened when I was younger. I believe it was Buddhism. Like, yeah, because even now, even just talking to you, I can picture some of the scenes that I saw. And as far as I know, those were real.
It's crazy how you can like tap into memories that just are sitting there in your mind, but you can't remember. That's
And look
amazing.
at them like a flip book, and not look at them, feel them. And that's, I think, Ryan, for us as guys having this conversation. Like, I know I am so much in my head. I can do a to-do list like nobody else, but to talk about feelings,
Mhm.
I could feel my father's hand, and I could feel what that felt like at that moment when he was holding my hand. And at those moments when there wasn't rage and there wasn't drinking and there wasn't fear, I felt love. And I could, and remembering that was cathartic.
Wow. This kind of hits a little harder now that I'm a dad to a son too, and I'm just
Mm.
thinking about that. Um, yeah, just wow. I just want to make sure I'm thinking about like how much I want to show my son love and don't ever have him question that. But what a great experience that was. And I'm sure not all experiences are, like you said, are great and wonderful. Some of them are probably really tough. But from your first experience that you said where you felt your mom to where you are today, like, so clearly that was the jumping off point. So let's talk about your path a little bit from that first moment to where you are today.
So I left that saying, "Oh my gosh, I have not taken a science class in 30 years. I don't know how to read a scientific paper. I don't know what is real and what is not. I need to understand the science first." I think my geeky side, my analytical side led the way. Went back to school, learned how to do those things, started reading the research, saying, "Okay, wow. Okay, I'm not crazy. There's a whole bunch of research on breaking repetitive thinking patterns, of having mystical experiences, of shaping behaviors, of getting off of addictions, of change that is out there. Okay, this is interesting." And I've made some investments and some plays in the medical space that I thought were interesting and kind of important. But the more I do, and the more I have had experiences over the last, what, almost 6 years now, 5 years and plus, I've become way more interested in the sacred, in connecting in this. Let me try it this way, Ryan. I grew up with a Jewish father and a Catholic mother. So I was a cashew, and I didn't have any strong connection to either tradition. Didn't really like either. I didn't like that my Jewish side um, questioned why my father would ever marry a Catholic woman. I didn't like how my Catholic side said the Jewish side's going to hell for not believing in Christ. As I experienced loss in my life, I gave up belief in God and just didn't see it as a thing that was going to be important to me. What I've now seen for me, not saying for anybody else but me, that this connection with the sacred is the most important part of my life. That I get to every day remember that we are all connected and we are powerful, loving beasts, and we are these spiritual creatures and can operate from that place of knowing, which just makes dealing with some of the things that happen in life just easier. Now I still produce, I still provide for my family, and I have been married 25 years this year, and I've 18 and a 20-year-old, and I'm a brother, and I'm a friend, and all these other things too. But I think about the practice first, and how do I show up to every conversation, and how do I show up for these people who I love? Um, and that's all really new. And actually, I haven't even told you, Ryan, since the last time we spoke, I actually applied and got into a doctoral program at a seminary. So
Congrats.
I'm going back to school to go learn more about the world's religions and to learn more about psychedelic lineage, which is complicated because our governments and our churches have suppressed these churches for so long, but they've never stopped practicing. So we can all look, whether it's Africa or Siberia or Europe or the Central and South America, there's no shortage of people practicing, or Asia or in India, people using psychedelics and ceremonials for ceremonial reasons. And I bring this up because I didn't realize that I had a psychedelic lineage. I didn't know. And I didn't know that it's okay to say, I want to tap into that. So yeah, part of my seminary journey is going to be, how do I document that? How do I explain that more clearly? Um, and I'm trying to find the words around that. But there's no question. I mean, the Greeks used psychedelic ritual for over 2,000 years. People like Plato and Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius, and all used that tool as part of their journey. And like some of those writings from Plato and Aristotle still hold up.
Mm.
Um, so I don't. It's just I didn't know I was allowed to do this. Period. And I didn't know that I could have a direct spiritual experience without a middleman. I thought the people who had these direct spiritual experiences were back in the olden days, but not me. No. But now it's like, not only can I do it, I can do it pretty regularly, and I enjoy doing this.
Yeah, that's super interesting. A conversation that I've had recently growing up Catholic, both my parents Catholic. Are you going to raise your son Catholic? Are you going to get your son baptized, confirmed, and all that? In which that's how I grew up, right? There wasn't really
Hmm.
much of a choice for me. I was just thrown into that. Now that I'm older, I question things. Not entirely sure what I believe. Do I believe in a higher power? Perhaps. Are there moments that I pray something goes well for me? Yeah, absolutely, right?
Hmm.
But I don't know. I question things. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to question things. And you growing up with a Catholic mom and a Jewish dad, I'm really just curious. And now that you've had these journeys with psychedelics, what do you believe in?
So I'm going to answer that. Let me first just take a pause, and for those out there who are listening to this from a Christian tradition, there's a group out there called Ligare, Ligare, and it's run primarily by an Episcopal priest, and it's this intersection of Christianity and psychedelics. So there are a number of people who don't believe you need to choose. If you grew up Christian and that's a faith that's important, there's a way to incorporate that into psychedelics. Same with there are Jewish groups that are similar. There are Islamic groups that tie into this. Certainly Buddhist groups, Hindu groups, but on the Christian side, the work done by the Reverend Hunt Priest and Laguerre is amazing, and fascinating. There's a yogi out of Rishikesh who talks about it's okay to believe in God until you're about 12. And then you should know. And what he says is, if you grew up in a desert and someone said to you, okay, you've only seen desert, you've never seen a river. I'm telling you, a river is going to make you feel wet. Well, I don't know what wet feels like. You will. And I'm telling you, in this river, you can lay down and it'll support you. I don't know what that feels like, but I believe you. Okay, that sounds good. And I'm telling you, in this river, you're going to feel the current, and you can feel it's going to be this incredible sensation. Okay, I believe you, I believe you, I believe you, but I don't know. And then at some point, you're brought to a river and you feel what wetness feels like, and you feel when you lay back, the river supports you. From that moment forward, no one can ever tell you that a river doesn't make you wet. No one can ever tell you that a river won't support you. No one can ever tell you that a river is something other than what you know it to be. For me on my journey, I I know that I am part of a spiritual journey. I know that there is a energy that we are connected to. I know that we are all part of the same ocean, even if we look like different waves. I know that I am nature. I'm not separate from nature. Nature's not out there, nature's here. And I can't unknow those things. That being said, there's lots of traditions that are important to lots of people, and that's okay. And those traditions can become part of that. I'm reading on a variety of them, and I think they're fascinating. I love my cultural background. Um, I do think I have my own perspective on Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and Moses and these great prophets. Um, but the most important thing that I know is, yeah, this is that I'm not alone ever. I'm supported. I'm loved, and I can't unknow those things.
Isn't there a belief as well by some people that religions were created by people that were on psychedelics and had these experiences and trips and then wrote these books and maybe the Bible, maybe not, but they pretty much passed along what they saw and their religion was created from that. And you're shaking your head, yeah, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of theories. There's some really interesting books on this. The Psychedelic Gospels is one that I'd recommend people pick up. The Immortality Key is a really cool book. It reads kind of like a Da Vinci Code, but it's a scholar whose thesis is that the first 400 years of Christianity, the reason Christianity took off the way it did is that the early Christians took the knowledge from Greece of using um, a psychedelic sacrament, and that was the body of Christ that was consumed in these underground communions, and that people did merge with God and have these experiences. It's a beautifully written book. But and there's books on psychedelics in the Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hindu, lots of theories that seem to make, again, when I take a psychedelic, I see things that's like, oh, that's where the stained glass came from. Oh, that's where this. I don't need to be told that we're all brothers and sisters. Now that I know we are all brothers and sisters, and I can
Mm.
understand how if this happened to you 2,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, that, oh, I get this now, and this is what I'm going to tell people. It makes total sense to me. So yes, I believe that many of the world's religions were shaped by psychedelics. Um, and but I'll add the counter to that. I also believe that many of the world's religions were shaped by man, and leads to losing focus on the teaching in exchange for the rules, in exchange for the power, in exchange and I think that that can be challenging. So I'm trying to hold both things in my hands. Is
Mm.
there room for, I mean, the teachings of Jesus, the teachings are beautiful, and there can be challenges with how they've been executed across different Christian faith traditions. And I'm just using that as an example.
This is a loaded question. I want to be aware of time. I can always have you back on. Hopefully, I'm loving this conversation. Um, with you connecting with your mom and your dad,
Hmm.
and I was talking about religion. I got to ask you this: what is your thought, or what is your belief on your experiences about the afterlife? Because I know you said like energy, and you've had connections with your family members. And I think the older I get, the whole energy thing is kind of making some sense to me. How we're all energy. How you said we're all like, kind of interconnected. It's interesting. Like I said, the older I get, the more I'm learning about like how just having organic, natural, like foods, plant-based foods, just whole foods, and then these medicines that we're talking about that are plant-based medicines, and all these things that are just the earth provides seems to be the best things for us, and our cure is just right in front of our face. It's all this man-made stuff and the processed stuff that just is kind of creating, I guess you could say, all these issues that we now have as a society and as humans. Um, but I don't know if yeah, do you want to touch on that real quick?
I mean, it sounds like you have an answer here. It's again, I think it's both. I think we're going through a process. People are acting with the level of awareness that they can act in at any given moment, and sometimes it's creating things that aren't good for us, physically, or aren't good for us mentally. Um, I certainly believe that again, this is a we are having these experiences, these human experiences, and we then return to energy, and then maybe we come back and have another human experience, and it's not me with the script I put on top of myself. It's not me with this name, with these parents, with these traditions, with these histories, with this ancestry, but it is the energy moving forward. And I think there's too many cases of past memories and um, different things of connecting further back than we should be able to do, that have been well documented. I mean, UVA has done amazing work on this with uh with children with past life memory, that would have no reason to know the things that they know about different things. Um,
If you know anybody in this area, let me know. I want to have a conversation with them. This stuff is just, it is super interesting. It's like, it's the question of life is like, what happens after? Are we going to see our loved ones again? I've had psychic mediums on my podcast just to ask this question. It is just super interesting. And to know someone that has kind of had these someone experiences, I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to ask you that question. So it's super interesting.
I also wonder if so. I want to just touch on what you just said about are you going to see somebody? Because
Mm,
I didn't see my mom. I felt my mom.
mhm.
And I wonder about, I don't know the answer here. I wonder about collective consciousness, collective memory. I personally, I don't believe that I'm probably going to see in the form that we take here,
Mm,
but I do believe we're connected and we're somehow able to tap into that and to know that we are, again, safe and loved and always have been and always will be now and in whatever this other phase of energy is. And I attribute that to, again, the experience with psychedelics. There's a particular psychedelic. Again, all these different medicines have different uses, but there's a particular psychedelic that is beautiful for just this piece that we're talking about here, and it's called Bufo or 5-MeO DMT. And what's interesting about this particular medicine is when you take this, there's no subject and object. There's no longer a you and a place and a time. You just feel energy. I just feel energy. Um, it's very hard to describe. I talk about like you dissolve into math. And what does that mean? I don't know. I can't explain it any other way until you feel it. But in that vibrational field of feeling, you can understand how in a world without a physical body, there can be comfort and love and community and surrounding. And I love that medicine for that purpose specifically. Um, and for people who want that kind of private conversation with their divine,
mm.
it's really a beautiful medicine for that purpose.
Is that a medicine that you use in your community, in your church?
Yeah, well, we just again we were in Mexico in January. I'll use that ceremony as an example.
Yeah, talk
So we're
talk
talking.
about what you do with your community and your church. I want to hear more about that.
We do these multi-day, multi-medicine retreats. So people come in advance. They do a health intake. So we have a group of medical professionals who look at the different prescriptions and supplements and history of these people and make sure that they are good candidates for um, the sacraments chosen so that we're not running into any contraindications and that the risks are reasonable given what is out there. And then we have an informed consent process. Are you sure you want to do this? And these are all the things that can go wrong with psychedelics. Assuming that they say yes to that and they we don't see any contraindications that we're particularly concerned about, they move into a preparation process and an intention setting process, and there's a group intention setting meeting. We then get to a ceremony, and we typically arrive on kind of day one, and we don't do psychedelics on that first day. We arrive, we do a nature activity, we have a healthy dinner, we sit around a fire, we just ground in. On day two, we typically start with a healthy breakfast. We then do breath work, yoga, and meditation. We surrender, we practice, we slow down, we breathe. And usually we open up the ceremonial weekend or retreat with a heart opener, an empathogen. So in January in Mexico, that looked like MDA or sassafras. It's the same. It's a just different name for the same thing. It's very similar to MDMA, but it's longer, it's stronger, and it's more visual. So that's why we choose to use that one um, in that ceremony. With that medicine, you feel love for yourself, you feel love for others. It turns off shame, blame, and guilt, which allows the participant to look back at their role in different processes of their lives with yeah, kind of like a third party observer
Mm,
without the reaction. Oh, that really wasn't my fault. Or, oh, I didn't act with the level of awareness that I should have or could have. Okay. And it's a beautiful way to start. We also, in again, January, we had 7 musicians up at the front and facilitators who were creating this custom soundscape. A sassafras ceremony is about 6 hours. So it's a deep time in medicine. People come out of that. We have a healthy dinner. We have a fire circle. And then the next day, we do it again. You do breakfast, breath work, yoga, meditation. And then on the day 2, we introduce psilocybin. So now they get to feel that love for themselves. They get to feel connected to all things. They get to feel connected to nature. That's what that medicine is particularly good for. Um, and that journey is 4.5 hours of kind of the interconnectedness of all things. It's also great about taking off the masks. I am at my core one thing, love. And then I put on a name and I put on a mask and I put on all these different things that my parents and my teachers and my government and my country have told me to put on. But that's not who I am. That's who I'm playing. So psilocybin is really powerful for separating that. We are all the same. We are all loving. What we do and what we play, two different things.
mm,
We then, and again, January, Mexico, we then reset the room and we serve bufo. So for those who wish to have that experience, they can have that experience that we talked about, that non-duality, that private conversation with their sacred, and they can experience that non-duality medicine. We then typically would have a nature day. In January, we went to the Mayans canal system and we floated down into a 45-minute meditation down these canals and got into a cenote and went to some Mayan temples. Again, just looking back at history. And then the last day we ended with we did a cave sound healing. And then we did a hape ceremony on that last day. So hape is a tobacco snuff that's a very common ceremony in many indigenous cultures. Sometimes it's mixed with some flowers or herbs. And it's blown up your nose it's not a psychedelic, but it does ground you into the present.
mm.
And we do that followed by a candlelight meditation, followed by a sharing circle. And then people leave on the last day. And we do that type of retreat a few times, 4 times a year. And then we'll do that retreat without bufo and with a different set of medicine people, a different version of that, maybe 3 or 4 times a year as well. And then different people, like I might participate in 4, but then sit or support for 3 or 4 others. Um, but yeah, that's kind of, and then sorry, let me just do one more thing. It's super important. We then give everybody a journal and we have 4 weeks of integration phone calls where we unpack what's happened and we have exercises around that. And then, yeah, and we go from there. I'm actually working on a version of that journal right now
Mm.
or in collaboration with Heroic Hearts Project that'll be customized for veterans. And I'm excited that should be out this August.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm super excited about that workbook, and then there's going to be a coaching therapist addendum to it. Yeah, I'm very excited about this.
Super interesting. So for the people that are like, wow, this sounds cool. I want to know more about this. Can they hop on your next retreat? Like, how can people do this? Who would you recommend this for? And
Mm,
perhaps who would you recommend maybe not do this?
I love that question. Yeah, so first answer: if people go to Sacred Path Community, they can get on the mailing list and learn about it. But we don't do any advertising. It's all word of mouth. It's all from things like my thesis is that if somebody is now 50 minutes into your podcast, they are probably being very intentional about this process. And so I like talking about
Thanks
this
for
at this.
listening.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for listening. And you're
Mhm.
listening for a reason. You're
Mhm.
listening. So, okay, Sacred Path Community, put your name on there, schedule a call, and let's talk about what you're trying to achieve. With any psychedelic ceremony, I I would say it's great for people who are not actively suicidal, not um 8, 9, 10. If you were to 10 depression scale of 1 to 10, not that upper echelon, but anyone else who's going through the range, this, let's call it the C range, the average
Mm,
range of depression, anxiety, mortality, substance use, whatever. Yeah, these are good medicines. With the heart openers, because those are stimulants, we you need to be careful. So that's where the health intake is important. If you here's a tip: spiritpharmacist.com. If you are considering a psychedelic, go there, talk to Dr. Ben Malcolm, who's a PharmD who specializes in psychedelic pharmacology. He has nothing to sell you but information. So rather than go to a medical clinic and buy where they're trying to sell you a $5,000 ketamine program, or to a church like mine, or to a psychedelic tourism, we all have our biases of wanting you to come. So take your own medical history to someone like Ben and have a discussion with him. Am I safe to take a heart opener? Am I safe to take a psilocybin? Am I safe to take a ketamine? What do I need to wean off of whatever I'm on? Do I need to be aware of these supplements? What do you think? And he does beautiful intakes, health intakes around this. And then you have control of that information for yourself, and you can make a more informed decision of, based on what he said, I probably should stick in a medical framework because I need a lot of support. Okay, great. Based on what he said, I feel really good about a ceremonial program. Based on what he said, I kind of want a hybrid, and I think I'll spend the money and go to a Beckley retreat in Jamaica.
mm.
Great, that's beautiful. It's all okay. Just what's right for you. And I think someone like Spirit Pharmacist just does such good work that's objective. Um, yeah. So I think it's $300 is a 1 hour health intake process with him. I think it's money well spent for people considering doing this.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's really good information right there. Before I let you go, I'm going to hit you with one. I
Do
want you
it.
to think about it for a second.
Okay.
This is important to me. I think it's going to be important to other listeners. How has psychedelics made you a better husband,
Mm.
a better father, and a better person?
It has changed my level of awareness and presence. So the old and the reasoning why I behave the way I do. So the old me as an entrepreneur, I believe that behavior, I need to build businesses, I need to scale them, was me trying to earn my parents' love 30 years after they passed. That I felt like I had that if I and earn everybody else's love. If I don't build it, if I'm not producing, I'm not worthy of your friendship. I'm not worthy of your love. And at a foundation, that's my parents. At another level, it's the people around me. Psychedelics have shown me that I'm worthy just as I am. I don't have to do anything to be worthy. Don't have to do anything to give love. I don't have to be stingy with my love. I can give it and receive it to many more people than I ever imagined. With that understanding, I can be more present in conversations, um, and I can be more aware of how I'm showing up for different things. You know what? That felt like a little bit of I'm trying to get them to like me. Why am I doing that? Okay. Do I need to do that? No. The I have everything I need today. And then everything else is lovely, but it's not needed. So the stopping searching for external validation
Hmm.
has been the game changer for me. And I do think that helps tremendously with my wife. I think it helped. I know. I mean, I was gone for so many years of my kids' childhood doing what I thought I needed to do to provide so that they can go to private school and that they could have the neighborhood we live in, the house that we have, and all those things. And I know that if they had the choice, they would have rather more time with me and less things.
Hmm.
And no bad me. I acted with the level of awareness as I had at that time, And now I'm acting with this level of awareness, and I can feel it in our relationships.
That's awesome. That's a great reminder too. And I know I said that's my last question, but I do want to hit on something that I just thought about is
Sure.
one of the things I'm looking forward to most is seeing my child act childlike. And at some age, we lose that. Do you feel that doing psychedelics has perhaps brought you back to being more childlike, where you don't care as much, where you don't care what people think about you as much, where you can dance or you can sing in public and not care what people are going to laugh at you or point at you or tease you or something like that? Do you feel that you've gotten some of that back? And have you been able to kind of connect that with your children a little bit?
Oh, 1,000%. But let's not talk about how I feel about this. Let's just talk about the science. What happens when you take a psychedelic? So as we get older, we literally are pairing our neural connections. And we are the analogy that Michael Pollan uses, I think is beautiful, is you're skiing down a mountain. And as we get older, we just keep skiing in the same tracks. And eventually those tracks get very deep to the point where we've all known people who are, quote, set in their ways.
Mm.
Well, the psychedelic medicine is going to allow neurons to fire together that haven't fired together in many, many, many years. And when that happens, it's a fresh coat of powder on that mountain. And all of a sudden, I remember that I can ski over the whole mountain. And once I remember that, I can remember that I don't have to think about my relationship with food or alcohol or smoking or eating, or how I think about how I'm being treated, or how I think about my relationship with anybody the way I've been thinking about it. I can think about it these other ways. And that's freeing and powerful. Also in the psychedelic, because of, I believe, the connection with the sacred, this recognition of, wow, the trillion upon trillion upon trillions of accidents that had to happen for the universe to conspire for me to be alive right at this moment is incredible. And oh my God, I get to be alive. And how beautiful is just the breath and the awareness of being aware. That is something that you can feel. And sometimes you feel that because you actually have a death experience in the psychedelic. And sometimes it's just, you just remember this, you get this ecstatic remembrance. Um, and that I think is powerful. And we didn't talk about that, this other thing, but just gently on the, where we have to be careful, where I have to be careful in the psychedelic practice is remembering we're spiritual peers. I don't know more than you. I don't know what's right for you. I only know about me. And I'm on my path of learning, healing, and growing. And our path is clearly interacting, which is why we're here today. Um, but I don't know what you should do or you should feel or you should believe. And that's okay. That's not my place.
Mm.
We are spiritual peers figuring this all out together on this process. And I, in this journey, if someone is looking at a psychedelic experience medically or spiritually, and you get the sense that that person feels like they're better than me, that person feels like they know what I need to do, that's a warning sign to be careful with that person.
Mm.
Maybe it's okay, but maybe it's not. And maybe that the fact that your spidey senses are tingling is, and are you, again, you're brave enough to now head down this direction. Now you're brave enough to say no to that particular person with knowing that when the time is right, the right opportunity and the right teacher and spiritual peer will appear. That was a long-winded answer, Ryan. Did
No,
that
I
work for
love
you?
it. Yes, I love it. I love all of it. And, just over an hour here, it's definitely not enough time to cover all of this. So I 1000% would love to have you back on in the future. We can dive more into all of this because I have so many more questions. There's even just a conversation about how you think and why you think the way you think and stuff like that. I know we've only scratched the surface, but for the people that are super interested in learning more about you, how to follow you, how to work with you, please tell people where to find you.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, Ryan. So for mattzemon.com is my website. There's lots of content on there. There's the ability to get on my mailing list. Sacred Path Community is the church group that I work with, the spiritual community that I work with. And if you want to get on that mailing list, that's where you go. Psychedelics for Everyone is available everywhere books are sold, and there's an Audible version. And then Beyond the Trip is available on Amazon. A lot recently of retreat centers and those places in Colorado and Oregon are ordering my book in bulk. And again, you can go to my website if you want to order a bulk of the of either of those books. And then stay my Instagram, matt.zeman, and LinkedIn. I'm super active on those places. Um, those are all the best places for me.
Perfect. And all those links will be in the show notes. So feel free to scroll
Awesome.
down and give it a click, open right up and give you a follow. Matt, like I said, come back on anytime. There's a
I
lot more we have
appreciate
to
that,
dive
Ryan.
into. So I
We
really
could
do
talk for
appreciate your
hours.
time. Yes, we will talk for hours. So thank you so much. I appreciate it again.
Thank you.